The day my grandfather's lawyer looked directly at my parents and said, "That's not what your father wanted," I finally understood why they had been acting so strangely for the past 4 years. My name is Hannah, and growing up, my grandfather was the one person who made me feel seen. While my parents were always focused on appearances, achievements, and what looked impressive to other people, my grandfather cared about quieter things. Honesty, patience, character. When I was younger, I used to spend weekends at his house helping him organize old photographs and paperwork in his tiny office. He always told me the truth mattered more than charm because charm disappears the moment people stop getting what they want. At the time, I didn't fully understand what he meant. Years later, I did. My parents had always been obsessed with control. Not in obvious ways. They never shouted or made dramatic scenes. Their manipulation was quieter than that. Strategic. Polite. They guided every decision in my life while pretending it was for my own good. What college I attended. What job I accepted. Even who I spent time with. After my grandfather passed away, things became even stranger. The reading of the will was delayed because of legal processing, or at least that was the explanation I received. My parents handled everything themselves and insisted there was nothing complicated about the estate. I trusted them, at first, but little things started bothering me. Whenever I asked questions about my grandfather's assets, my mother would quickly change the subject. My father became unusually careful with his wording any time inheritance came up. They kept repeating the same phrase over and over. "We're protecting your future." It sounded caring, but it never felt honest. Over the next 4 years, they slowly pushed documents toward me. Financial agreements, investment authorizations, trust revisions. Every conversation felt rehearsed. Whenever I hesitated, my father would smile patiently and say, "This is all temporary until everything settles." I wanted to believe him, but something about it kept bothering me. Then came the dinner that changed everything. My parents invited me over unexpectedly one evening. The atmosphere felt strangely formal, like they had prepared for something important. Stacks of papers sat neatly on the dining room table. "We just need your signature on a few final documents," my mother said casually. I sat down slowly and flipped through the pages. Most of it was filled with legal language I didn't fully understand, but one section caught my attention immediately. Transfer of controlling interests. I looked up. What exactly am I signing away? My father's expression changed for only a second, but I noticed it. "It's procedural," he replied smoothly. "This just allows us to manage the estate more efficiently." "Temporarily?" I asked. Of course. But something inside me finally stopped trusting them. So instead of signing, I asked for copies to review independently. The silence that followed told me everything. My mother's smile disappeared first. "Why would you need that?" she asked carefully. "Because I want to understand what I'm signing." For the first time in years, I saw irritation slip through my father's calm expression. "You don't need to make this difficult, Hannah." Difficult. That word stayed in my mind the entire drive home. That night, I contacted the law office listed on the paperwork. Not my parents' attorney, my grandfather's original lawyer. And that decision changed everything. 2 days later, I sat across from a quiet older man named Richard Bennett in a small office lined with shelves of organized files. He reviewed the documents carefully without interrupting me. The longer he read, the quieter the room became. Finally, he removed his glasses slowly. "Did you know your grandfather created conditions specifically designed to protect your inheritance from outside control?" he asked. I stared at him. "No." He nodded once, like he expected that answer. Then he opened another folder. Inside were original trust instructions signed personally by my grandfather years before his death. My chest tightened as I read them. The inheritance had always been intended directly for me, not managed by my parents, not transferred through shared control. Protected. Carefully. Legally. Richard explained everything calmly. Over the last 4 years, my parents had been restructuring assets and preparing agreements that would eventually place nearly everything under their authority permanently. They hadn't technically broken the law, but they had built a system designed to pressure me into surrendering control willingly, piece by piece, signature by signature. And if I had signed those final papers at dinner, it would have been almost impossible to reverse. I sat there stunned, replaying every conversation from the past 4 years in my mind. Every delay, every vague explanation, every carefully timed document. It had all been intentional. What happens now? I asked quietly. Richard closed the folder gently. Now, he said, we make sure your grandfather's wishes are respected. The following week, another formal meeting was arranged. This time, my parents seemed confident again. My father greeted me warmly, like the tension from dinner had never happened. Then Richard entered the room carrying several files. Everything changed immediately. I watched my parents' expressions shift the moment they recognized him. My mother went pale first. My father tried to stay calm. Why is he here? Richard placed the documents on the table carefully. Because your daughter requested independent legal review. Silence filled the room. For the next hour, every hidden detail was explained clearly. The trust structure, the protections, the transfer attempts, every single thing my grandfather had prepared to prevent manipulation, and every single thing my parents had quietly tried to work around. At one point, my father interrupted angrily. We were trying to manage things responsibly. Richard looked directly at him. No, he replied calmly. You were trying to gain control. Your father specifically denied you. The room went completely silent after that. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply listened as the truth unfolded piece by piece. For years, my parents had treated me like someone too naive to notice what they were doing. But my grandfather had noticed long before I ever could. That was the painful part. He had already known exactly who they were. When the meeting finally ended, my parents barely looked at me. My mother tried once. Hannah, this isn't what it looks like. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel confused by their words anymore. I felt clear. It's exactly what it looks like, I said quietly. After that, the inheritance remained fully protected under the original terms my grandfather created. Independent oversight replaced every agreement my parents had attempted to build. Legally. Permanently. I stopped speaking to them regularly after that. Not out of revenge. Not even anger. Just distance. Because once someone spends years proving they only value what they can take from you, eventually you stop offering access to your life. My grandfather used to say truth always survives longer than manipulation. He was right. In the end, my parents spent 4 years building a trap. And one honest lawyer destroyed it in a single afternoon.